Well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Elliot Kallen, CEO of Prosperity Financial Group, and I'd like to welcome you to another exciting episode of Meet the Expert. Well, it's almost Mother's Day, everybody. It's May. Spring flowers, beautiful. It's a very feminine month, very beautiful month. My favorite flowers are coming to the end of their life, which are tulips, which are also my mother's favorite flowers. So Mother's Day is so important, and my mother's not here to celebrate it anymore, which makes it even more important to so many people, because I know that women end up being the biggest caretakers of the family for their children, many times for their grandchildren, and almost always for their aging parents or the surviving aging parent that's getting very old. So many challenges in taking care of that, so many hats you have to wear, balls that have to be juggled at the same time. And it just seems to fall on the men when you actually on the woman when this happens. And we're going to dedicate this show to it. Now, men, if you're watching this, stay on. We're not just going to talk about women's topics. Most of these topics belong to everybody. It's not like there's a left brain and a right brain, or there's an A and a B, or a right and a wrong. We're all humans. We have a lot of the same needs. It's just some of these needs just are more particular to women and women investors, which is our world, than not. And I've been doing this now for 30 years, and I've had about 55% of my clients are women, have always been women, and every company I've owned, which is this is my fourth, I've always had predominant women, female employees and female clients. So welcome, everybody. And we are very excited to be with Tiffany Dyson. Tiffany, welcome to our show. And Tiffany is the Senior Practice Management Specialist for Putnam Investments, which is a multi-billion-dollar firm out of Boston. As a matter of fact, they invented the mutual fund. That's how old they are, back in the 1920s. Super exciting. So welcome, Tiffany.
Thank you so much, Elliot. I appreciate the time.
Tiffany deals with people like myself in the industry, particularly to giving educational topics, and in this case, educational topics relating to women. So if we could jump right into this, that would be great. If you need to reach me, I'm at 925-314-8503 or Elliot, ELLIOT, at prosperityfinancialgroup.com or www.prosperityfinancialgroup.com. So let me ask you some questions. So when we talk about financial planning for women, is it the same as a man, or does it really differ?
Yeah, that's a great one to start with, Elliot. And as you said, financial planning, it can be unique for every individual, regardless of gender. So there are certainly, though, some social, cultural, and economic factors that do make financial planning different for women versus men. Three, in fact, would be longer life expectancy, income gaps, and caregiving responsibilities. Some that you touched on just earlier in your introduction. So with the longer life expectancy, it's common knowledge that women tend to live longer than men. I think it's that a woman turning 65 today can expect to live around to 85 or 86 years on average, versus or compared to a man who might live to 82 or 83 years old. And when women live longer, healthcare costs may have a disproportionate impact on us. Not only are you paying for medical bills, through longer or more years, but you're also paying for more expensive medical bills, because as we age, we tend to spend more on healthcare costs. So this is, creates a challenge for women if they've not properly planned for these additional expenses and additional years in retirement. Then moving on to the income gap, progress has been made to, shorten or decrease the wage gap between men and women, but a woman do earn less for every dollar that a man earns. Today, white women are earning about 82 cents for every dollar that a man earns, and it's even less for Black and Hispanic women at 63 and 58 cents, respectively. So lower career earnings mean less retirement income, and that's going to require some extra diligent planning. And then lastly, as you mentioned, most women, or most of caregivers rather, are women. So these responsibilities add an extra layer of complexity. If a woman is, reducing their hours at work, they're giving up a promotion or even temporarily leaving the workforce. That's something that you have to account for in terms of the amount of money that they're able to accumulate, as well as some Social Security benefits considerations as well. So all of that in mind, there are certainly unique challenges that are faced by women specifically.
Well, when we talk about the unique challenges in the financial industry, how do we address women differently in their 40s and 50s and 60s?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no one size fits all for any age or generation. I know within the Putnam Seminar Financial Guidebook for Women, we categorize the 3 phases of a woman's life into growing literacy, accumulating wealth, and distributing wealth. So that pairs nicely with the 40s, 50s, and 60s portion of your question. There's always unique challenges and opportunities with each life phase. Fortunately, opportunities as well. We found it's important for advisors to take a holistic approach. So looking at the whole picture is beneficial to prioritize financial planning. I would say it's also important to remember that women may hit different financial milestones at different ages. But starting with looking at the women in their 40s, in this age range, many women are either in or approaching career heights, and they're balancing significant financial responsibilities. They're working on paying down their mortgages. They're preparing children for college. Maybe that includes saving for college or even taking out loans. They're working on retirement planning and then just budgeting for everyday expenses. So all of that, it is on top of their daily responsibilities. So there's a lot at work. A lot of different things go into the financial plan with women in this phase. And it's important for them to do things like annually review retirement accounts. Maybe they can increase or decrease contributions depending on their cash flow needs. And then, it's always helpful to make sure that beneficiaries are designated at this age, especially when children are maybe approaching the adult life.
I want to pick up on something you said, if I could, there, Tiffany. The caregivers. We know that majority of caregivers in this country, and I don't mean professionals that you're hiring from one of the agencies. I'm talking about family caregivers. It ends up most often, not always, but most often being the oldest daughter, the single daughter. It ends up being the woman in the house, more than the man. I don't know if that's just innate in genetics or just how the cookie crumbles, so to speak, but it ends up that way. And it did in my family when my mother got very sick. My sister was the one that ended up taking care of her more than my brother and myself. But given the caregiver roles, what considerations to that caregiver on a personality world, because that's a certain personality, go into their investment world, because this is a business show. And how does that affect it?
Absolutely. Yeah, there are definitely links. And I think I was just reading an AARP article that talked about family caregivers. They're averaging 23 hours per week with caregiving responsibilities. That's a part-time job, right? So there are a lot of considerations when it comes to how it would impact their investing or their investing tendencies. You can simply look at the fact that they're not only focused on their life, their finances, and their needs, but somebody else's. So I would say, first and foremost, you have maybe a lower risk tolerance. They may be more risk averse because if you're making decisions on behalf of another person, especially one who may not be working yet or can't work, has never been able to work, you tend to be more cautious and protective by nature. And obviously that's going to affect, the aggressiveness or the conservative nature that you might take in your investing strategy. So there's risk aversion. I would say even the time constraints that they have that others don't, they might have, less time or energy to engage with investing and the proper monitoring or adjustments that need to be made on, relatively frequent basis. So that's just one reason right there that a caregiver could certainly benefit from having a dedicated financial advisor at their side.
So I had a client in my office last week, and we're talking with Tiffany Dyson from Putnam Investments in Boston about the role of women and women's investing and all the challenges that they have. It's May, it's Mother's Day month. And if you need to reach us, it's Elliot, ELL, at prosperityfinancialgroup.com, or prosperityfinancialgroup.com is the website, 925-314-8503. And I had a client in my office last week, Tiffany, and she's in her early 60s, and she's got aging parents in LA. So this is San Francisco to LA. And she is the caregiver for these aging parents. And they live far away. I mean, LA's as far away as New York, whether you have to drive or fly, you're not there. And she's got to make big financial decisions for them, healthcare decisions. And then she has a son and another child, a grandchild from that. It gets confusing. And the son is not married with a child, and there's a girlfriend, a mother, then very confusing on the whole thing. So given that, they call that the sandwich generation. She's stuck in there. She's taking care of the elder generation, and she's taking care of the younger. In this case, she's watching out of the younger, but somebody's got to watch a lot, which is the grandchild. The ultimate sandwich generation for somebody in their 60s on there. So how do we have, when I'm talking to women in that world, how do I have that conversation? Because the pressures on them are so significant that everything seems to take a back seat to the stress of being the sandwich person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that client is absolutely not alone. I think it's almost half of adults in their 40s and 50s who are, either raising a child or financially supporting an adult child, and, have a parent who is 65 or older. And as you said, a lot more people are living with their nuclear family exclusively. So when there's that physical distance, it makes the challenge that much more difficult. So, how can advisors have this conversation? I think there are two critical considerations we've seen financial advisors use to address the sandwich generation. And it's not only just addressing their basic needs, but their short and long-term investment needs as well. So right off the bat, I would say it's critical that advisors understand the extent of the client's caregiving responsibilities. So in either the discovery process or the initial communication, it's important to include one or more questions about caregiving in the client's life. Now, that might not be the case for the client the day that you start working with them. So it's important to return to the topic in annual reviews and just make it a routine question, because this circumstance is fluid. You really never know when something can change in both, the parent or the child's life. So when clients do work with advisors, it's important for the advisor to make sure that they deeply, deeply understand the extent of the responsibilities and then how that might impact their financial situation. I think realistically, the flip side of not talking about it can be pretty detrimental. We've heard horror stories of advisors who didn't find out a client was the financial decision maker for a parent until they were coordinating the funeral and trying to find extra funds to cover it. So a financial advisor's expertise can help the caregiver, not only manage their loved one's finances a little easier or manage their own finances easier, but also help the caregiver feel like they don't have to hold the burden alone. So there's a double benefit there. And then
Okay, finish your thought.
Yeah. And then I would say, addressing financial priorities with a multi-generational lens can be really helpful. So making sure that you understand the priorities and the roadblocks that the clients may face due to added financial responsibilities of caregiving. Now, there was a recent study from, I believe it was Bankrate. They came out showing that almost 70% of parents who lend to adult children do so by making financial sacrifices. These financial sacrifices are looking like a variety of things. Most staggering for me is they're taking out funds from their retirement savings. And that was over 40% of those parents. Frankly, it's hard to believe with the penalties around early withdrawals. So advisors can be mindful that this is happening to a lot of different people across the country, and help parents be not only more informed around this kind of financial decision, but they can use them as an opportunity to discuss whether they actually can afford to help their adult children with their finances.
So let's talk for a moment about the newly single women out there. And I don't mean the women coming out of college or graduate school. I'm talking about one that's recently widowed or recently divorced, because that's going to happen one way or the other for most women. So when we're talking about finances and investing for them, what are the considerations there?
Yeah, absolutely. This is unfortunately very common across the nation as well. So investing, or even more generally, just financial planning, is different for divorcees and widows, and that's really based on their age or generation, which kind of culminates on a few different factors, right? Like risk tolerance, their time horizons, and even their financial literacy. So for the younger divorcees and widows, they may have more time to recover financially, or even enter the workforce. It's possible that they have not been the working spouse, so being able to enter the workforce with a longer time horizon would be especially beneficial for their retirement plans. Now, being younger, they may be able to take an aggressive or a more aggressive investment approach, again, due to the longer time they have between now and their financial goals.
So I'll tell you a cute little story as I interrupt you here. And that is my mother, when she became widowed, she was in her late 60s, and she had never signed a check in her life. She's very old world. She was an Auschwitz survivor, stay-at-home mom, very traditional in the old world. Was a great mother, the caretaker kind of person, tough as nails, and made sure you didn't get away with anything at all. About 5 feet tall, and my family has strong memories of her whacking me quite a bit, just because of my mouth there. But she was strong, and we hooked her up with a financial planner at that time, and she knew nothing about finance. Like I said, she had never even signed a check in her life in the days that everybody used checks. She had to learn that, go to the bank, make a deposit. All these things were brand new for her. At the end of the day, she would read and become savvy and go in and challenge the financial advisor in New Jersey as to, okay, I see that we have gold. Why did we buy gold? It's already at $700 an ounce. And these are different times. It peaked at 800. Why did we do this? Why are we in mutual funds instead of stocks? Why stocks instead of mutual funds? And just challenge him on that. And she was widowed. And so there it is. There's a personality that my father never asked, never had that savvy. And she ended up being much more savvy than he did. So you never know.
You never know. And I think that's a great point. And a financial advisor can never assume, right? There are a lot of studies that come out saying, women may be less confident at investing than their, male counterparts. And again, some generalizations there, but it's important to communicate with the client first and foremost, right? Ask the questions, be open, explore and learn how much they know, how much they're curious about, and then you can properly respond with the resources, the tools, and the education. And with women in your mother's generation, I think it's important for advisors to remember how the financial world has only recently opened up for women, right? It wasn't until 1974 that women were allowed to apply for and open a credit card in their name without a man to co-sign. So that fact alone, that's less than 50 years ago. So it's important to remember, and I'm excited to see where the next 50 lead us.
Great, great. So just one or two more questions. This has been great on that. So women aging, we can't ignore that. Women live longer than men, and it's an issue. And you have all these aging issues that come up. And I'm not just talking about long-term care insurance, because that's an answer in a small amount of situations. And we're not really talking about products here at all. What are those aging issues that are going to come to a woman? Probably wouldn't come up to a man. They could. I mean, I know men that live till their 90s and outlive their spouse by 20 years, but for the most part, this is going to affect women more. What are those issues?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's considerations like when you live longer and you work less or you earn less, that's a nasty combo. So being sure that, one, you have saved enough and to get you to and through retirement, it's critical, realistically. I think when we look at women outliving their spouses and preparing for aging, it's all about starting the conversation early, right? And when widows, become the head of household, or they become the primary financial decision maker, and they don't know the basics, or they don't know where things like important documents were stored, that could be a recipe for a disaster. So, when an advisor can help start the conversation about longevity early, and even kind of create a safe space to talk about fears and worries, that can be really important for a client's life. I know some advisors we've worked with have networked and partnered with therapists or professional facilitators to have that family meeting, to have that conversation about, okay, what do you need to know, even if it's the beneficiary and the clients, what do we need to know for next steps in case of emergency? Now, Putnam, we have an awesome resource that advisors can help start the conversation. It's called the I Love You letter. And it's a document it's effectively blank, but it has spaces for investors to write down critical information needed by the spouse or beneficiaries in case of that emergency. So think about the location of the will, contact information for your trusted advisors, liabilities, assets, life insurance policies. It's really comprehensive, and it helps the client or the main decision maker at the very least think about what they have or have not communicated to their other half. So an advisor can help bridge that conversation and make a confusing time easier, you won't soon forget that advisor. So we've seen a lot of success with that process.
Great. And then one last question, and just to sum it up in just a couple of sentences, this has been great. When you're dealing with people like me in the industry, and I'm a man, I've got a lot of women clients, there's a stereotype out there that if you're a woman, you need a woman. If you're a man, you need a man. And all these things, the same stereotype about doctors and lawyers. They're all the same stereotypes. So when you're dealing with my industry and you're giving advice to deal with women clients, whether they're married, divorced, or widowed, doesn't matter. One or two or three sentences that you can give to someone like me that I can translate and bring that attitude or that lack of ambivalence or that concentrated effort to my female clients too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as simple as it sounds, it's putting yourself in the other person's shoe, right? We talked about how it's been almost recent times that women have been involved in the financial conversation. So making sure to be careful of, common, gender biases and just aware so that you can counteract them, creating a supportive and welcoming environment. And then, as always, catering communication styles to their preference. This is hopefully a no-brainer and something that advisors do for all their clients, but being transparent and explicitly asking, what's the cadence and what's the style you prefer to be communicated with? that can go a long way. People are appreciative when you ask for feedback and then, implement or execute on that feedback.
This has been great, Tiffany. I can't thank you enough. We've been
Likewise.
We've been talking with
Likewise.
Tiffany Dyson from Putnam. Great conversation. It's Mother's Day. If you want to set up a meeting with me, you can go right on our website at www.prosperityfinancialgroup.com. And my calendar is there. Click in there. We'd love to have coffee with you in our office. Set up a Zoom, whatever works for you. Whether you're a female, whether you're a male, it doesn't matter. We'd love to see you, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Tiffany, thanks again.
Of course. Thank you for having me, Elliot.
Have a great day, everybody, and happy Mother's Day.